Hello everyone to Random Active Squirrel. Today is Act 17, Random Active Cinema, the Equalizer Trilogy, Equalizer 3, and the sum of its parts. So today is your last visit with Substitute Squirrel. After this, you're going to have Actual Squirrel back again, because Actual Squirrel will be back from his trip. So, I don't know if that makes you happy or sad, but the original Squirrel will now be back. Today we're gonna, I'll be honest, I had recorded something and I was all excited so I could go mentally start packing and folding clothes and Actual Squirrel could go on his trip, and then my little chip broke, and so I'm coming back for a second time, but it's kind of like a Groundhog Day thing. I remember it because I did it and nobody else does, so there's time travel for you, I guess. What we're going to do today is talk a little bit about sort of the nuts and bolts of Equalizer 3. Then we're going to, there's some numbers about it that I find interesting, sort of box office, that kind of stuff. It's probably got the most stable box office numbers of any movie that's probably ever really been released, which is kind of crazy. So then after that, we'll go into the plot and some of the actors and that kind of stuff and the actual story of Equalizer 3. A basic review of it, what I think of it, and then we'll talk a little bit about the trilogy and what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and then we'll close it out with a review on Equalizer 3 and also a whole review on the trilogy itself. So Equalizer 3 is done by the same people who helped create Equalizer 1 and 2. And I find that generally interesting just because most of the time you get into trilogies, there's maybe one or two bodies that are attached to it, but they're more trilogies in name only. And a lot of times it's like going and seeing some band that doesn't have original members in, but keeps touring. So the one that always caught my eye, and it's no insult to them, if you can keep touring with it, go ahead and do it, was I found that Skid Row has been touring for years with none of its original members. So if you're going to see the classic Skid Row songs, like Youth Gone Wild and all that kind of stuff, none of those people that did the original stuff is there. So essentially you're paying for a very expensive cover bands. What I like about the Equalizer stuff is whether or not they intended to make a trilogy, the same basic creative people were involved, so they took the story and were able to keep the spirit of it going. The filming remained similar in nature, and it felt like a continuation of this very human-driven, dramatic action storyline. Another thing I like about Equalizer 3 is its trailer, which sounds like a weird thing to say because, I don't know, but its trailer is amazing, and I had to rewatch it before I filmed this. The movie is like the trailer. You catch the nuance in what it's saying, but it does this phenomenal job of not actually spoiling the movie, which is almost unheard of nowadays with trailers. And I was surprised how much of the movie actually happens in the first half or so of the movie. There's a few shots towards the end that they show in the trailer that are in the movie, but mostly it's the first parts that drive the story that make you curious as to do you want to go or not. I was surprised, like if you watch a trailer a couple times, you have the point where Denzel Washington, Robert McCall's character, says you have 9 seconds to make a decision, and shows him turning on his watch. I was really surprised how and where that fit in the movie. And the movie's a gut punch when you walk in. You're basically thrown into the world with what he's doing. There's very little explanation. Kind of, I think there's a James Bond movie that was probably most famous for doing sort of the opening that doesn't look like it fits, but kind of gets you into the story, and it became like an action gimmick where they kind of get you all revved up with the action. This is what you're walking into, and then they give you the real story, so it's like a false start story almost. There's probably a better theater term or movie term for that, but it eludes me right now. So you start off with the movie showing him getting to where he did, so you can see about where the trailers put you, and he says, you have 9 seconds to give me what I want. and the main thug or the main mafia guy that's causing all stuff is walking around going, what happened to my place? Sees him, and then he says, here's the deal. I'm taking what I need so I can get what I want, so I can get out of here. Either you're going to give it to me, or I'm going to take it from you. You have 9 seconds. And of course, being it's an Equalizer movie, you know what's going to happen. He decides to fight it. He takes everyone out. He says why things are going the way they are. And because he's a very smart combat fighter, he knows exactly what he's doing. Well, something happens along the way where he ends up getting shot where he didn't plan on as he's leaving, and he gets saved by a policeman from a small Italian town, and he's staying at the doctor, or an old doctor who lives in an Italian town. One of the questions they ask in it right away is he looks at him and says, are you a good man or a bad man? As he's saving him. And he says, I don't know. And it was an interesting question, because that's what drives a lot of the story, of him figuring out, is he a good man or is he a bad man? The next part of the act, he does a lot of healing, and it's him kind of figuring out mentally where he wants to be, him discovering people who live a life that isn't constantly driven by violence and chaos, and him discovering that if he could have that life, that'd be a pretty cool life for him to have. He also introduces another character played by Dakota Fanning, who he calls up and says, there's this island, this is your free tip, it's full of dead people and drugs, and you may like it. Her response is, how did you get my number? And he's wondering how she got this tip, and she starts digging into it, and that goes into a secondary plot that actually ties up the bow at the end of the movie. Along the way, he makes some new mob friends in the town because he doesn't like seeing injustice. This triggers into a secondary set of stories that leads into the Robert McCall story. One of those lines I kind of liked, I don't really know why, but just kind of the way he said it made me smile. Someone asked what his name was. He said it was Robert McCall, 2 C's, 2 L's. And there's just something about the very preciseness of it that I really like that line. The characters themselves, as a city, it's memorable, but each character is somewhat forgettable. And I'm not sure if they designed it that way to make it where he's falling in love with people in general, or if it's just the writing wasn't strong enough to really make all the characters stand out. There wasn't a lot of big primary actors in this, and a lot of the movie spent even with like the secondary people, so you don't really see the main, even like the main bad guy that much. A lot of it's the secondary ones and the tertiary ones, kind of the local thugs. As for my review, I liked it. I liked it as much as the others. I knew what to expect after seeing the other two and being aware of the fact that it would be slow burn. So the fact that it was a lot of setting up and him discovering the world, that didn't surprise me very much. It did get a little bit slow again, but this is that slow burn common theme that I keep saying with it, is he's trying to build a world. He's trying to build an environment where you can understand his chances. While digging around to find out some of the stuff here in numbers, which I'll go in a second, somebody asked the question, if Robert McCall and John Wick were in a battle, who would win? And the response was, it depends. If it was like just instantaneous combat, John Wick would win. If it was more the cat and mouse that an Equalizer does, Robert McCall may actually beat John Wick, because he'd figure out how to actually fight him where he would never be at a disadvantage, and he would go into stupid fights. One of the things that's intriguing about the whole series, though, is its stability when it opens. So in 2014, when the first Equalizer came out, it opened to 34 million and made about 192 worldwide. The second one opened at about 36 million and closed at about 190 million worldwide. The third one had a 4-day weekend, but if you subtract the Monday, it had like 34 million, and it's going to hover around 170, 180 million, probably about 170, 180 million. It's crazy because statistically, 3 movies that are sequels like this rarely hit as consistently as they do. So numerically, I find that very fascinating. And I think that says a lot about how I feel about the trilogy also. Is it's a very stable trilogy. The first feels like the second, feels like the third. but not in a bad way. If you like the first, you'll probably enjoy the second and the third. For me, if I had to place order, the first is the best, then it's the third, and then it's the second. And it's mostly because the story they're walking into on the second one, I'm getting tired of. The way they reveal the enemy in the third, the bad guy, the one that causes all the action, I'm just tired of that storyline. So I wasn't nearly as kind to that one as I was other stories, I guess. As far as the trilogy itself will go, I think it's a very good trilogy because of what I mentioned earlier, how it actually keeps itself together. It's conscious of the other movies. It doesn't break the rules from the other movies. And it allows his character to be old, which is where you can love or hate the pacing. On a structure level, I actually like it because it moves the speed that he would move. As a person who watches films like that, sometimes they get a little exhausting because I'm waiting for the world to move and my brain is processing faster than you're filming, and I wish you would jump to the part that actually matters. But they're setting a tone. The dialogue is consistent. The acting is very consistent. There's a few moments when it's brilliant acting. I think the best acting is probably from the first one. But none of it's bad. And it kind of feels like one of those trilogies that, at least when I was growing up and people had cable television, they would have weekend trivia or weekend trilogies that they would run. And so you'd start your afternoon off, and 6 hours later you were watching all three of the movies put together. If you went back to back or they were on TV, you could very easily get sucked into all of them. So as far as the review goes, here we go. We'll get both done here right away. Hopefully the chip plays nice, and then I can go eat, because eating sounds awesome. Here. Alright, so Equalizer 3, I would give it about a 6.5. It's better to me than the second. It's not as good as the first. As far as quality goes, I'd put it somewhere in that 7 out of 10. You have veteran filmmakers, veteran writers, veteran actors making quality product. It's worth your time. Is it always great? No, but it has its moments of awesome interspersed in there. As far as the trilogy goes, I would give it, for my personal taste, about a 7 out of 10. If I fell into it, I would definitely rewatch it. I don't know if I'll ever go back and rewatch it again, but I enjoy it. I have pleasant thoughts about it, and it has those moments that are pretty cool. The open on this third one, it's pretty awesome. Like, you can't do an open much better than that. And then the actual, I would probably put it 8 out of 10. I think it, like I said, there's a consistency to it, and whether you like the consistency or hate the consistency, it just feels like they made a full story. And I think that's what makes the third probably better than it should be in that sense. The third one, the way they tie everything in, the way they answer the questions, why does he talk to Dakota Fanning, that kind of stuff, he ties it together so well. Like, why is he in Italy? And then a couple lines in the end make you realize, oh, this is why the story happened the way it did. And it just was a series of events that led him to the fact that he's, fighting a mob boss or a bunch of mob people in a small town in Italy. So thank you for watching the trilogy, this trilogy one. It was different to do this. It was different because normally I come in all psyched an idea, I have my notes, and I know that I have to stick the landing on this video because that's all I got. This one is different because you kind of have to remember your energy from the other ones. You have to focus, like, how far do you actually want to talk about stuff, because you don't want to give everything away on the first one. So the pacing and stuff, I feel like wasn't as good, but it was definitely worth the challenge. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope the content was worth it. If you like what you saw, hit the like button. If you have comments on this series, what is your favorite movie? Is there a moment in it that you like best? Is there a trilogy of movies that you saw that maybe you'd like me to poke at and see what my opinion is on all three? It'd be fun to kind of poke at that too. Put that in the comments. And if you have been watching a few of these things, I have only one question for you. Why haven't you subscribed yet? I'm mostly harmless. If I was completely harmless, you wouldn't be watching me. But I'm mostly harmless. I think I'm fun. Or at least I tell myself I'm fun, and some people are watching me. So go ahead and subscribe. It's mostly harmless, and maybe then you can find useless information to torment your friends and neighbors with, because that's always fun. So thank you for your time. Have a good rest of your day, and goodbye.